Welcome back, everybody. This is the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage, and I wanted to talk to you all today about Treadle sewing machine belts. And I did a little short video comparing Treadle belts to belts that we use today, and I think I explained, I can find one of those examples here, I explained why the width of a modern belt, here's an orange one, but of course you can get black rubber reproductions, is, I know it may look a little wider than this, but it actually has a very similar footprint underneath. And that's important because in the last video where I talked about belts, I was mentioning the fact that when people went from treadle machines to electric machines, they had all of these machines with hand wheels with grooves that were designed to fit treadle belts. And so when they developed the standard for electric belts, they made them sort of a V shape, sometimes kind of an arch on the inside, so that they would fit the grooves of the hand wheels that people had been using with treadle belts. This was to make them more adaptable as they tried to get people to transition over to electricity. It may seem like a really odd thing to us now, but electricity was once state of the art. You know, fiber optic cable coming to people's businesses or homes may seem more state of the art. It's not much, that's not as drastic a change as going from no electricity or gas lamps to electric power was. But my point here is that just because something is new doesn't mean everybody rushes out and gets it right away. It takes time for the cost to come down and so forth. But anyway, I wanted to show all of you some of just the basics of how I approach treadle belt installation. Now, sometimes you get a treadle machine and the belt is old. What do I mean by that? Well, the belts are made of leather. And just like any other material, leather over time dry rots. And, you know, it gets old and it begins to fail. It'll either get brittle or, and you can see here, this is an old belt. You can see it's doing not unlike what, you know, rubber belts do when they get really old and tired. So it was time for a new belt. You can get new treadle belt, and I believe it comes in two sizes. I'll have to go back and double check what they are. This is the most common size. This would have been for Singer treadles. I currently have a new belt installed on this treadle machine, getting ready to list it. And just wanted to talk to you all about kind of how I went about doing this. Now, treadle belting comes, you can buy it by the foot or you can buy it by the roll. If you buy it by the roll, you're going to be making, you know, quite a few treadle belts. So usually, if you just have one treadle machine, most people just buy enough to make their belt. Now, you guys know the old rule about, what is it, measure twice, cut once when you're dealing with things like wood so you don't waste. You want to take your time measuring for this. So here's what I did. I took, pretend this length, which is a little short, but pretend this is the new piece that I'm going to install on the treadle. Now, what I want to do is take belting long enough to go from, we're going to move the camera forward here, bear with me guys. We want to, of course, measure from, here's the groove of the hand wheel. We're going to come down through these two holes because, as you may notice, unlike later metal flaps, I call them, these pieces that fill in this little space here, for treadle machines, they needed these holes because they're used as sort of a guide for these belts. Treadle belts are very long. They're the longest belts you're probably going to have on any machine. Now, so you've got the belt, right? And you're gonna take it over, whoops, come here. You're gonna take it over the groove of the hand wheel and you're gonna pull it down. You're gonna have, you know, you're gonna have two ends that you have not joined, okay? And then we're gonna focus down below the table now, and you're gonna focus down here. And down here, of course, is where the giant treadle, I call it the flywheel. That may not be the technical term for it. And we're going to lower the tripod here just a bit, guys. Try to get you a little bit better angle. Okay, so you can see this giant flywheel that is attached, of course, to the pedal, which is used to provide power to the machine. Now, you're going to take your belt and you're going to basically put it through one of two. You have a sort of a metal guide here, for lack of a better word, that comes down. You put the belt through this guide. Let's make sure that it's showing up where I'm pointing here. Okay, so there's a guide in the back, and then you have a guide in the front with a little lever that allows you to move it if you need to take it off. Now, when you first are measuring for your treadle belt, one of the things you really want to do is you want extra length as you're measuring off, okay? So let's suppose that, let's suppose I get it measured, and as I, just tied a knot here, as I come around, right, I want overlap. I want the piece that I'm dealing with to be longer than is necessary, okay? Now, we're not gonna actually start putting a hole and connecting the belt yet. Once you believe you have some extra length to play with, because you don't want to cut it too short and then you're going to have to start over, cut it just, a couple of inches extra. You can eyeball this, right? So you're going to cut it. All right, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to stretch the belt. Now, what I have done is I personally have taken the belt and I have literally put it across the back of my shoulders and sort of pulled with both of my hands to stretch the belt. Now, you may have a better way of doing this. And the reason is that leather belts stretch, and we know that. And what we're trying to accomplish here is to pre-stretch the leather belting as much as possible. That doesn't mean we're going to get all the elasticity out, but we're going to get some. And we need to do this because that will limit the amount of stretching that the belt undergoes once it's installed. Now, sometimes you put in a treadle leather belt and you use it for a while and all of a sudden it becomes loose. And the reason is that it has stretched, and that if it happens, you can take it off and you can adjust it. So let's talk about, let's say you've gotten it stretched. Okay. Now, you remember you still got your, extra buffer in length here, but now you've probably got a little bit more because you've stretched it. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to feed the belt, just like I have the one that's now installed in this table. And you're going to do this, and I would join the two ends. You're going to feed it down onto the rim of the giant wheel, and it's going to want to flip off on you. It's not because you don't have enough belt. It's just kind of a wiggly thing, and you might want another person to kind of help you guide it. It's not difficult, but you'll notice it'll kind of want to squirm on you. So once you have gotten this, the easiest place to see what you're doing, I believe, is right up here. So let's say you get the two ends and you've got overlapping, right? They're crossing each other because you've got extra belt. What you want to do here is get the belt as taut as you think you want it, right? And you've got to allow some slack in the belt so that you can actually connect the two ends once you've cut them. So let's suppose you get them, and now you have the overlap, and it's like this. And once you're comfortable with that, you're going to cut the belt. You can cut it with a pair of pliers that have the sharp cutting edge, or even some really sharp scissors, is up to you. So let's say you've cut that end, okay? So now you have two ends of your treadle belt. Now, the first thing you want to do is get a hole in both ends of the belt. Now, I've already done that to this one, but I'll show you how I'm doing it. What I'm doing is I'm taking my drill, and I have a very thin or narrow drill bit. And what I'm doing is there are different ways to do this. Some people do this with a leather punch. I prefer to do it this way. But you've got to do this carefully and safely. You don't want the drill anywhere near your fingers, obviously, and you don't want this belt to roll, like a little Tootsie Roll. You want it to be still. And the goal is to make sure that when you drill your hole or punch your hole into the leather, you want to do two things. You want to be as much on center as possible, because if you get too far over to either end, there won't be enough strength in the fiber of the belt and it will break on you. Or there's also another thing you want to focus on. Here's this old dry rotted treadle belt. And if you guys look at it, make sure we're in focus here, guys. If you look closely at this, one of the things you see two belt ends and one of them has torn because we have the little connector hook. This is probably a little bit better view of it here, where it was put into one end of the belt, and then here's where the two belt ends come together. But the other one was too close, or maybe it just dry rotted and broke away. Okay, so it's probably easier to see on this newer belt. When you get treadle belt, you should get these hooks. They look like little pieces of chain link. And of course, one end, you can see it here, goes through one of the holes, and then you have the other end. Now remember, you've got this thing, you've got the belt fished through. Remember, it's got to be around your hand wheel and your main flywheel by the pedal. And once it's in place and you bring these two ends of the belt together, what you're going to want to do is you're going to take where you've drilled the hole on the other end, make sure it's not too close to the end of the belt. If you do that, it won't have enough strength and it will tear, just like that dry rotted one has. But this one I've got a little less than 1/4 of an inch. I want to say probably 3/16 of an inch or something like that. Now, once this, again, when the belt, don't do this when you've got the belt in your hands, or you're just going to have to undo it. Once you get the belt fished through the machine and everything is lined up in the grooves, you are going to pull the two ends of the belt together, and then you will take the hook that's still free and you're going to put it into the hole you've drilled, and you should get, hopefully, there's enough space for that hook to fit. If not, you might have to actually cut off part of the end of the belt because you may have too much belt there. Let's see if I can pull this in like that. Now, what you want is for this hook to be in line with the belt. So clearly, I'm going to have to shave off a little bit of this, right? When you are finished, you should have here we go. And I'll get the camera, get you guys a close-up so you can actually see what I'm talking about. This is a physically very strange thing to try to demonstrate and film at the same time. So let's move in, we'll zoom in. Woo, come here. Okay guys, if you look closely, what you're seeing is the two ends of the treadle belt that I've installed, and notice that the hook is long enough to have gone through the holes in both belt ends, and it is connecting them. And that's essentially how you initially install a treadle belt. Now, for some of you, no matter how much stretching you do, you will still end up with a belt that can end up with a little too much slack. Now, the question is, well, how much slack should there be? How tight should a treadle belt be? And that's kind of difficult to answer depending on you, the sewer. The more taut the belt is, the more sensitive it will be when you put your feet on that treadle, and you may or may not have less control over it. I like what I have here. What I have here is I have just enough tension on this belt that when I move it, you'll notice that the belt moves when I move the hand wheel, it's moving the needle. Sometimes when I start, the belt might slip a little bit, but that's okay. Singers were very well known for needing, at least in the electrical era, for what's called spooling. So you start the hand wheel towards you and kind of like jump starting something, if you will. And this is also useful, again, for you having really ultimate slow needle control. Obviously, if the belt is too loose or it has stretched too much, you may have to take this hook off, and you may actually have to clip a very small, go slowly, a very small amount of the treadle belt end, and then you may have to drill another hole even, or maybe just try to reconnect this. Now, there's another thing that you can use to help you get friction on the belt without over tightening it. And I ended up using and finding something in a music store. And this is it. Now, it doesn't have to be this brand. This is just a brand I found. This is rosin. Rosin is sourced from evergreen trees. This one was made in England, but yours doesn't have to be. And what is it? It's essentially has a sort of a sticky, it looks like it's wrapped in something here, but inside is rosin. It's almost like if you've ever seen a tree have some sap that's running, it's a type of sap. And that sap is put into a rosin product, and these are graded. This one says 6B, which is one of the highest in friction, at least according to the music store. Now, why am I talking about rosin for the bow of a stringed instrument? Well, what you can do is, and you can do this here, or you can do it down below here, you can see where I've done it, is you can sew with the treadle, and as you do, let the belt pull against the rosin tablet, and it will leave a deposit layer of rosin on the friction side of your belt, and it helps your belt get a little stickier. But you still get to keep, again, this nice fluid low tension on the treadle belt. And again, some of you may have your preferences. You may prefer a treadle belt with more tension. But once you get your belt settled and you've pre-stretched it, even if you have to take it off and readjust it once more, I did not have to with this one because I used the rosin. But whatever method you use, once you have gotten your treadle belt sort of seasoned, if I can use that term, basically that's it. And other than oiling, there's really nothing else you need to do. Now I have taken care of this treadle table below, and of course there are metal parts here that move against each other, and you want to put a lightweight grease or an oil in those joints to help those, because the table mechanism, of course, is something you would lubricate, just like the machine. I appreciate you folks watching. It's been interesting as I've been focusing back on these treadles. I realize how much I like them, especially if I want to sew something heavy and I want really nice needle control, and not to mention it's such a connection to the past and to the history of all of our past generations who sewed some incredible clothing with what was at the time state-of-the-art technology. Thanks for watching, everyone. Stay tuned. I'll be making more videos, and actually more treadle videos coming soon.